Yeah, so greetings everybody. So today's going to be a demonstration of a fairly simple part, but with a focus on symmetry constraints within the sketching environment. This is a drawing of what the part's going to look like. Um, the requirement will be for my students that it has two features, one pad, one pocket. So no additional features other than, it's required to have the one pad and the one pocket. It's also required to have the dimensional constraints as shown. Now, this presents an issue, especially when you're looking at the depth of the part. So notice this part has a 2 inches in depth. And so I'm expecting this 2-inch parameter to be in the model. So students might be tempted to do a mirrored extent on this, and which would give a 1 inch and a 1 inch dimension. I'm expecting them to have the 2-inch dimension in the model, else they'll lose points. I'm also expecting this pocket to be centered. And so notice I've got a little note here for my students that pocket is centered on face. That's just an extra note to let them know that this pocket is definitely centered. And notice that it's a 1 inch by 1.5 inch pocket that goes all the way through. But notice there's no location dimensions for this pocket. So there's nothing locating it from the edge, from this edge, nor this edge, nor this edge. So it is definitely centered. So the challenge for the students will be, well, how do I get this pocket centered while also keeping this 2-inch dimension here? So let's begin with this. So notice my original block is 2 inches by 3 inches. So I've got CATIA started. I'm in inches as far as my units. I'm going to start a sketch here. The very first pad is going to be fairly simple, especially the sketch. So I'm using the profile tool, and I'm capturing dimensional or geometrical constraints as I go through. And I've got horizontal, vertical, horizontal, vertical. It looks like a coincident was established there. So that's my dimensional constraints. My geometrical constraints. As far as my dimensional constraints, I've got one there, I've got a length here, and then I've got a length here, and then I also have a 120 right there. So that makes my sketch green, which is what I'm looking for. This is going to be 2, this is going to be 3, and this is going to be 0.75 according to the drawing, with a 120-degree angle between there. So that's fairly simple. All right, so get out of the sketch. Notice where I'm at in my sketching environment. Notice how I've tied into my default reference planes. Now let's do a pad. So go to the pad tool. Now I'm going to enter 2. And so that's what I'm looking for because it's got that 2-inch parameter here. Now you may be tempted to do a 1-inch mirrored extent, but that's going in CATIA. That will give you a 1 inch here versus, which is not in the drawing. So this is a lesson on capturing design intent in the drawing that's shown in the drawing. So I could go over here to the second limit and do a 1 inch, but that gives me a 1 and a 1. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm going to make that back to 0, and then so I'm going to do a 2. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that 2-inch parameter. Maybe I'll use it in an assembly later. Maybe I'll use it in a formula. Who knows? But I do want that 2-inch parameter in my model. So far so good. That's my first feature, a pad. Let's do a pocket. So I'm going to start on the top. This incline, or what in the drawing is an auxiliary view, but I'm sketching on this face. So I'm just going to go ahead and do my sketch, and then let's think about I'm going to do it as a rectangle, and then let's think about what I'm looking at here. So I know by looking at my drawing that that's a 1.5 by 1 inch size of the pocket rectangle. So I'm going to come in and I can create my 1 inch there, and I can create my 1.5 here. Now, of course, it's white because it's not constrained. It's still got these degree of freedom to be able to move around on the sketch plane. So you might be tempted to put a offset dimension and offset dimension to lock that in so it's not white. Well, those dimensions are not in the drawing, and so I don't want to see any dimensions that are not in the drawing. So let me give you a little trick here for this one. So I'm going to do a couple of construction lines. So I'm going to go to the line tool on the profile toolbar, and then I'm going to go to the sketch tools toolbar. I want to make this construction, and so I'm going to just kind of get it centered, but I want to be careful not to grab any dimensional constraints geometrical constraints that I don't want. So I'm just going to but I do want that to be vertical. And then I'm going to do another one that's horizontal. Again, these are construction entities. And let me change my display to be wireframe so you can see this a little better. So I've got a horizontal construction line, vertical construction line. Watch this little technique. So I can center this vertical construction line between these two edges with a symmetry constraint. And let me rotate this around just a little bit so you can see this in 3D. You might be better to go back to shaded so you can see these edges. So this is a symmetry constraint. So the third selection of a symmetry constraint is your axis of symmetry. So I can select there, which is an edge, and control select this edge, and control select that construction line, and do a symmetry constraint. And what that's going to do is it's going to put that construction line center between those two edges. And I can do the same thing for the horizontal construction line. So pre-select those two edges, and then control select that is my third selection. The axis of symmetry has to be your third selection. Throw in my symmetry constraint. And then now notice that this horizontal construction line is centered between these two edges, and this vertical construction line is centered between these two edges. Now what I can do is I can make these two entities with a symmetry constraint symmetrical around that line. Okay. And then do the same thing with these two with a symmetry constraint. So notice I've got a green sketch. It's centered on my face, a little bit of a workaround there with a symmetry constraint, but that is a good exercise in using the symmetry constraint. So that's fully green. It matches my design intent. I can get out of the sketch. I can do my pad. In this case, it's going to be up to last pad. And there's my finished part. I get two features, a pad, a pocket. Meets my dimensional design intent, which was a requirement for my students as far as the exercise in the academic world here, to get them used to using, in essence, the reality, actually, the symmetry sketch constraint. So I hope that helps you. Have a great day.